Top 10 Famous People Who Got Away with Murder. Maybe you will never guess what the number 1 murder is. Like and subscribe for weekly videos. In the comments below, list one topic you think should be in a top 10 video and comment if you subscribe to this channel. 10 Kirk Douglas quickly in the 1950 film Young Man with the Horn, Jean Spangler appearances as an extra. It was the last time anyone ever observed her. On October 7, 1949, Spangler evaporated. Her body has never been recovered. The main piece of information associated with the vanishing is a worn-out handbag. Inside read a note, "Can hardly wait anymore. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work out best thusly while Mother is away." The incomplete correspondence was routed to Kirk, the principal name of her Young Man with the Horn co-star. Actor Kirk Douglas was traveling in Palm Springs when called the police totally unprompted. He denied being the Kirk being referred to before he was even viewed as a suspect. He told specialists that he never knew Spangler. Afterward, he changed his story to state he met her in passing. Spangler's family trusts Douglas' relationship was more close. Spangler's mom says her little girl dated an affluent Kirk who never went to the entryway. Spangler's companion referenced that Jean was 3 months pregnant when she vanished. The most mainstream hypothesis is that Spangler passed on in a bungled fetus removal financed by the wedded Douglas. The degree to Douglas and Spangler's relationship was rarely decided. 9 Max Linder He Will Slaughter Me, Ellen Jean Peters trusted to her mom. In a matter of seconds after the fact, her dormant body was found close to spouse Max Linder's. All signs recommend she was right. Max Linder was the first famous actor. Showing up in many short movies at the turn of the 20th century, Linder's character Max was the principal universally known part of the film age. Admirers like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and Harold Lloyd intensely obtained from Linder's image of physical satire. Following his administration as a dispatch driver in World War I, Linder returned in a profound discouragement. He attempted to stifle his distress by wedding Ellen Jean Peters, a lady a large portion of his age. The marriage did little to mitigate his issues. In February 1924, the couple inadvertently overdosed on barbiturates. At the point when they cut their wrists a year later, most trusted it was a self-destruction agreement. Little girl Maud Linder proposes Peters didn't go willing. In her journal, Maud described a specialist that caught her dad tell a companion that he anticipated executing his better half, so no one else could date her. 8 Burt Reynolds in the 1973 western The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, Burt Reynolds' J. Grobart is a protector. When Sarah Miles Catherine escapes an abusive lover, Grobart takes the law into his own hands. Perhaps a real-life version of this story played out on the movie set. As filming wrapped up on February 11, 1973, Miles accompanied Reynolds to his room for a nightcap. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, she sauntered into her manager, and occasional lover, David Whiting's room. An enraged and jealous Whiting struck her. She fled to Reynolds' room for the night. By the next morning, Whiting was dead in a pool of his blood. Ignoring the scratches and abrasions on his hands and body, medical examiners believed a despondent Whiting overdosed. Reynolds tracked his footprints through the scene to retrieve the vial of red tablets Whiting died clasping. The vial was subsequently lost. Due to inconsistencies about her location that night and if Whiting and her fought, Miles was called to testify. MGM initially prevented Miles and Reynolds from speaking, citing the financial strain the delay might cause. Eventually, the two spoke at the inquest. Neither deposition explained where all the blood came from. 7 Albert Broccoli The Three Stooges could endure a shot. Their maker proved unable. Vaudevillian Ted Healy framed the Joel Company in 1922. Between contract debates and missing checks, Larry, Curly, and Moe left Healy's control. Subsequent to losing his most prominent achievement, Healy turned into a hostile alcoholic. It was anything but a total astonishment when the 41-year-old cleaned-up jokester ended up dead after one final excursion to Hollywood's Trocadero nightclub. James Bond could endure a shot. His maker could as well. Until his passing in 1995, Albert R. Broccoli delivered each 007 film. Broccoli was more terrible at keeping mysteries than his government operative hero. In his conflicting retellings, He admitted to taking an interest in a fight the night prior to Healy's 1937 demise. Specialist T.J. Fleming contends that Healy capitulated to the injuries from his 3 ambushers. MGM couldn't bear the cost for one of their rewarding stars to be related with the attack, particularly considering Beery's picture was attached to an Oscar-winning depiction of a smashed fighter in The Champ. Utilizing their contacts, the studio precluded a post-mortem examination. The coroner governed Healy passed on of intense harmful nephritis. The police didn't examine further. 6. Suge Knight. Jerry Heller has one lament. The long-lasting chief of gangsta rap pioneers, NWA, wishes that Eazy-E executed maker Suge Knight whenever he got the opportunity. Heller accepts that Suge Knight got to Eazy-E first. Marky's right, Eazy-E's child, shares Heller's conviction. The hypothesis comes from a meeting Knight gave on a 2003 scene of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Kimmel kidded about Suge Knight's very much archived fierce history. Knight answered that he no longer looks for retaliation with shots. He likes this new thing out, individuals sell them constantly. They get this stuff they get blood from someone with AIDS, and afterward they shoot you with it. That is the moderate death. Eazy-E didn't have a moderate passing. He immediately surrendered to AIDS-related pneumonia. Marquise refers to the ailment's quick movement as proof Eazy-E was killed. The course of events starts in 1991 when Knight sent watchmen to strong-arm Eazy-E to deliver Dr. Dre onto Knight's death row name. Eventually following the quarrel, Knight pricked Eazy-E with a needle. In the event that Suge Knight is answerable for Eazy-E's 1995 demise, he didn't pull off homicide. Starting at 2018, he has been detained for intentional homicide. 5. William Randolph Hearst. Thomas Ence's life ought to be better known. The alleged father of the Western delivered more than 800 films, including the star-making execution of America's sweetheart Mary Pickford. His studio turned into the model for film creation for quite a long time. However, his most suffering inheritance is his death. The first version of the Los Angeles Times left no inquiry that Ince kicked the bucket as a film producer shot on William Randolph Hearst's yacht. Later features transformed a cardiovascular breakdown. The uniqueness of Determinations was on the grounds that a Hearst representative discovered that Ince ate and drank so much he kicked the bucket of intense heartburn. Rather, the D.A. wouldn't ask before calling the majority of the individuals on board. The winning hypothesis is that Ince got into the center of a darling's fight. Hearst welcomed Chaplin to perceive how Davis and the quiet film virtuoso acted beneath deck. On November 19, 1924, Hearst strolled in on the canoodling sweethearts. He discharged one shot from his gun. The shot ricocheted and struck the close-by Ince. Chaplin's secretary detailed seeing Ince hauled away the vessel with his head dying. Ince's body was quickly incinerated. Possibly out of regard or blame, Hearst composed Ince's widow a check. For Jerry Lee Lewis. On August 23, 1983, Sean Michelle Lewis settled on 2 telephone decisions. The initially was to her mom saying she was considering leaving lovebird melodic lunatic Jerry Lee Lewis. The second was to her secondary school darling's sister. The 2 examined plans to get away from Mississippi and her oppressive marriage. Highly involved with talking, the telephone went dead. The following day, Sean Lewis was dead too. DeSoto County cops found Sean's cadaver flawlessly positioned on head of the guest room bed. The incomparable Balls of Fire vocalist stumbled over seeping without any preparation marks on his hand. There was blood on the divider's cover, and both gatherings' garments. Jerry's skin and blood was found underneath Sean's wrecked fingernails. Her arm was penetrated also to the injuries Jerry had from infusing himself with everyday compound mixed drinks. Glass shards were tossed around the house. For 60 minutes, the representative sheriff a private conversation with DeSoto County's greatest VIP. The coroner managed it was a coincidental methadone overdose. None of the physical proof was admitted to the fantastic jury. The fabulous jury didn't locate any indication of unfairness. Jerry Lee Lewis was allowed to backpedal on visit as the killer. 3. Johannes Kepler. For the good of his reputation, Tycho Brahe presumably wishes he was killed. The acknowledged hypothesis is that the spearheading space expert passed on in 1601 from holding in his pee excessively long. Out of expert graciousness, Brahe never pardoned himself from the Holy Roman Emperor's feast. After 11 days, he kicked the bucket from a urinary contamination. Nonetheless, this shameful story originates from the man with the most thought process to lie about it. His information gave key bits of knowledge into the movement of Mars, stars, and buttressed the Copernican model. His greatest revelation, however, was his lab collaborator, Johannes Kepler. The main issue is that Brahe would not let any other person see his records. Alongside the numerous foes the discourteous Brahe made, Kepler developed to loathe Brahe and his secrecy. In 1991, Brahe's body was uncovered. The body contained perceptibly elevated levels of mercury. Creators Joshua and Ann Lee Gilder place in heavenly intrigue that Kepler harmed Brahe with the poisonous synthetic. Dubiously, after Brahe's abrupt demise, Kepler held onto the entirety of the exploration that was cut off to him while Brahe was alive. With assistance from Brahe's figurings, Kepler demonstrated that planets travel in a curved circle. In the event that the hypothesis is valid, the homicide laid the preparation for Kepler to make probably the greatest advancement in logical history. To Thomas Jefferson. The main thing Thomas Jefferson did when he became president was pardon James Callender. The two had an arrangement. To improve Jefferson's political desire, Callender distributed proof that Jefferson's adversary, Alexander Hamilton, taken part in an extramarital entanglements with Maria Reynolds. In return, Jefferson would liberate Callender from jail and pay the lawful fees. Jefferson at first paid portion of Callender's fine. The political discussion encompassing the conspicuous defilement kept Jefferson from paying the rest of the $100. Callender fought by criticizing Jefferson in the papers. Examiners sponsored by Jefferson attempted to quiet Callender. A confession in the Philadelphia Aurora affirmed Callender was a boozer and his significant other had kicked the bucket from explicitly sent maladies. Callender fought back by composing the combustible report that Jefferson had fathered a few youngsters with his slave Sally Hemings. Journalist Harry Crosswell was arraigned for circling the Hemings gossipy tidbits. Some portion of his protection was that the fundamental cases were valid. He mentioned Callender vouched for the story's veracity. 4 days before Callender was set to communicate his perspective, he suffocated in the James River. The Richmond coroner managed the passing a smashed mishap, in spite of not knowing whether Callender was inebriated. Library of Virginia chronicles hold no record of any probe. There was not sufficient opportunity to examine at any rate. Under 24 hours subsequent to washing aground, Callender's body was buried. The most presumed aggressor is Jefferson's partner and noticeable Richmond lawyer George Hay. Weeks before he passed on, Hay cudgeled Callender with a stick. Not long after Callender's body was found, Hay was elevated to U.S. lawyer for the District of Virginia. The main issue with the hypothesis is that it would imply that a president would manhandle their capacity. 1. Adolf Hitler. In any event, one individual idea: Adolf Hitler was not a beast. She was refuted. To young person Gilly Raubal, Hitler worked as a substitute dad figure, affectionately alluded to as Uncle Alfie. Displaying uncommon sympathy, Hitler checked out raising his half-niece by supporting her fantasies about singing expertly. Those emotions transformed into fixation. Bits of gossip conjecture that the two had a perverted illicit relationship. Hitler restricted Raubal from reaching individuals. On September 18, 1931, Hitler and Raubal openly quarreled over his controlling nature. Raubal began a letter promising a companion she would before long desert her uncle in Munich. In mid-sentence, in mid-word, she took out Hitler's own weapon and shot herself in the chest. Bavarian priest of equity Franz Gertner botched the examination. Proof recommending a fight, for example, wounds and erect nose, were neglected. Without a self-destruction note, Nazi press passed the questionable story that she executed herself over a forthcoming music presentation. A maverick examination by the Public Investigator's Office was suppressed. The body was immediately covered in a Catholic burial ground, notwithstanding the way that the strict proprietors banned covering self-destruction casualties. 50 stormtroopers scoured correspondent Friedrich Gerlich's office in the wake of claiming Hitler pulled the trigger. Gerlich was shipped off Dachau, the jail camp where he passed on in 1942. Hitler, obviously, caused substantially more passing. It is fascinating to figure how history might have changed on the off chance that he had been gotten the first occasion when he did.